Oh, hello, I didn't see you come in. I'm just waiting around until midnight. You know, I think this is finally going to be the year that I catch whoever it is that's been leaving presents for me each Christmas. While I've been waiting around, I've actually been doing a little bit of reading about the history of Christmas. You know, Christmas is celebrated in completely different ways all over the world, and some places even celebrate it on different dates. The world's traditions and customs surrounding Christmas have been shared between one another so many times over the years that a lot of the modern traditions are basically like a multicultural and history-rich Christmas-themed soup. Is this whole thing alcohol? But it's fascinating to see all the ways that people like to get jolly for the Christmas season, so why not join me to discover the secrets of Christmas past, present, and elsewhere? Actually, before we get started, I should probably change into something a little bit more appropriate. But since we're on a pretty tight schedule, it'll probably be fast if I just get changed during a jump cut. There we go, that's a bit better. Now then, like any good story, let's start in the middle. We are going to uncover the truth behind Santa Claus. That's right, we're talking Papa Kringle, St. Nicholas, old Father Christmas himself. Well, firstly, I should probably explain that each of these are actually completely different people. Or at least they used to be. But these guys all played pivotal parts in crafting Santa Claus into the man that he is today, so let's find out how they did it. Our first stop takes us to 15th century England, where there were the first whispers of a man by the name of Father Christmas. Now, Father Christmas was first created as more of a symbolic figure to represent festive merriment, rather than an actual person, kind of like Mother Nature or Father Time. And back in those days, the popular way to celebrate Christmas was you'd give your kids a walnut and a stick to share betwixt the 17 of them, and then go get drunk until the new year. But then, along came the fun police, who didn't like the fact that people were throwing birthday parties for Jesus. Oh, by the way, Christmas is when Jesus was born. Well, actually, there's a bit more to it than that. Maybe we should have started there instead. Look, never mind, it's too late now. We'll come back to it later. Let's just get back to Father Christmas. So this guy named Ben Jonson thought that the fun police were lame for not wanting to get turned for the Lord. So he decided to write a play called Christmas, His Mask, that was then performed before the royal court in 1616. This was also the first time that Father Christmas was depicted as an old man with a white beard. But in this play, Father Christmas rolls up to the club with his daughters, who are all named after different Christmas traditions, and they're all initially denied entry. He then tries to convince the bouncer that he's able to be a good Christian while still having a good time with his daughters, Carol, mince pie, and small baggie of suspicious white powder. And thankfully, the royal court loved the play, and they humbly accepted defeat. No, they hated it so much they banned Christmas. Yep, they banned Christmas. Well, actually, both sides fought back and forth for another 30-ish years after that play, until a pamphlet comic was published called The Arraignment, Conviction, and Imprisonment of Christmas, which featured Father Christmas being arrested and hanged for getting too silly. And it was at this point that the fun police thought, oh yeah, well, we'll show them. And show them they did, because then they went and did exactly what they were being mocked for doing. But thankfully, the public gracefully accepted the loss and they moved on with their lives. No, they didn't do that. In response to the ban on Christmas, the people kept fighting back and printed more and more pamphlet comics until 1658, when they printed one depicting Father Christmas on trial and being acquitted by a jury. But thankfully, after years of feuding, the fun police really liked this one, and so they decided to unban Christmas. No, seriously, they actually did. They unbanned Christmas. It was around the same time that the Stuart Restoration was happening, so the fun police were actually completely different people at that point, but I mean, we can't say for certain that the comics weren't what did it, so hooray! Father Christmas is now a free man! He then went on to be portrayed in various forms of art and literature periodically in the following years. He's also thought to be the inspiration behind The Ghost of Christmas Present from A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. So yeah, that's kind of neat. But how did this debauched image of Christmas become one of the key ingredients in the recipe for Santa Claus? To find that answer, we'll need to travel some 1,000 years earlier to a place called Myra, where we will find our second key ingredient, Saint Nicholas. Now, Saint Nick here is much closer to the embodiment of the modern Christmas spirit. He's also thought to be the spiritual inspiration behind the depictions of the majority of the modern festive figures, giving gifts and doing good deeds for those in need. Among the many stories of St. Nicholas's kindness, there are those like him bringing aid to a father whose daughters were on the brink of being sold off due to financial struggles. Until St. Nick snuck onto their roof in the middle of the night and tossed bags of gold down their chimney. which were then caught in the stockings that the daughters had hung up to dry by the fire. There's also the story of him resurrecting some kids that he found pickled in a barrel. So anyway, back to the gold thing. As the centuries passed, his actions inspired others to keep up the tradition of giving gifts to children on the eve of St. Nicholas's Day, often leaving the gifts in stockings by the fireplace. Some people liked the idea, but they thought that the figure associated with the tradition should be baby Jesus, rather than just a saint. So, some people attributed it to baby Jesus celebrating on the eve of his birth on December 25th, while others attributed it to St. Nicholas and celebrated on the eve of St. Nicholas's Day on December 6th. A few centuries passed and other countries caught wind of this and began referring to St. Nicholas as Sinterklaas and baby Jesus as Christkindl. But after years of arguing about which one was better, a meeting was held and it went exactly like this. Oh, fine, let's just say that they're the same dude, okay? But we'll use your name of Santa Claus and we'll use your date of December 25th. There. Now everybody's happy. But what does he look like? Ah, fine. He looks like this drunk guy from England. Does he have to wear that? Yeah, I'm not exactly loving the green. He should wear red and white like the robes of St. Nicholas. No, he should wear baby clothes like Jesus. Okay, fine, he can just wear whatever. I didn't really even care. In the first place. And that is exactly how Santa was born. But in the grand scheme of things, Santa was pretty late to the game, only gaining his first boost of popularity just a few centuries ago in North America. But throughout the centuries leading up to the creation of Santa Claus, the actions of St. Nicholas were spreading like wildfire across the whole world, which at the time was basically just Europe and a tiny bit of Africa and Asia. And several of these countries heard these stories and said, hey, that sounds pretty cool and all, but what if instead of a saint, he was a creature? Now, boys and girls, allow me to paint you a picture. It's the 15th century-ish. You live in insert country here, and one of your 22 children approaches you, asking about a guy they heard the kids in the country next door talking about, who brings presents to all the good boys and girls. Your child then turns to you and asks, Mother/father, mightn't we partake in a similar jubilation? And you decide to respond by telling them a new seasonal story about a guy named insert name here, who is kind of like the guy that the neighbors were talking about, except this guy either A, steals clothes from any homes that don't leave out a gift of mulled wine and a bowl of almonds for him. B, leaves charcoal in the fireplace of any houses without it, so that everyone can stay warm during the winter. Or C, gives a blessing to the next year's harvest of anyone who sings him a song. Well, if you answered D, he just loves to vore up some kids, then you were right. Geez, who wrote this? Well, it's actually not too far off from the truth. There are a strangely high number of weird little Christmas creatures that apparently just can't get through the Christmas season without breaking off a piece of that Kit Kat bar, as well as a few other weirdos who are mostly just very uncomfortable to be around. There's a disturbingly large number of these guys, so in order to keep on schedule, we'll have to quickly race through them all. Eats kids, eats pudding, also eats pudding, and eats kids, maims kids, indifferent kids, but will challenge you to a rap battle for the right to enter your house and ransack your cupboards. Eats kids, disembowels kids, abducts kids, disembowels and abducts kids. Okay, this one is just a goat that is made of straw and people keep setting it on fire, which is just a bit weird. Eats kids. Oh, and these little freaks are actually the sons of those other guys. And they're named after the weird stuff that kids like to do, like licking spoons and sniffing doorways. But they're pretty much harmless. Oh, and so is this guy. Nah, just kidding, he eats kids too. Now, this might be a little controversial, but personally, I think there should be fewer things trying to eat kids on Christmas. Like, it doesn't have to be none, but just a few less might be nice. But it does beg the age-old question of, huh? Because, seriously, why are there so many stories of creatures trying to eat kids on Christmas? Well, I think I might have actually found the answer. But in order to get there, we need to take one last detour, all the way to when Christmas first began, with the birth of Jim. The end of the year has been a time of celebration for many cultures for thousands of years. Whether it was to celebrate the winter solstice or just the changing of the seasons, this time of year has long been a pretty popular period. But then, there was one year when things got a little crazy. Yeah, I'm thinking about going to visit my wife's family this year. Have you got anything special planned for the winter solstice? This guy came to tell these guys to go see this other guy who was just born in Bethlehem. There were also these other guys who were told the same thing, except they were guided by a star in the night sky, instead of an unfathomable fifth-dimensional being. So the word got out that the Son of God was born, and lots of people were really happy about it, but then some other people, not so much. But the whole situation was generally considered as being a pretty big deal nonetheless. It was only around the 6th century when the people of Jerusalem decided that, hey, Jesus being born was a pretty big deal, right? I agree. It was a pretty big deal. So, you guys think we should, get turned for the Lord? But remember the fun police from earlier? Yeah, they've had departments pretty much everywhere throughout all of history. Well, the fun police were keeping an eye out for any funny business, like a teacher looking out for any kids playing flash games during computer time at school. And in just the same way that the students will try to convince the teachers that the games are actually helping with pattern recognition or hand-eye coordination, the public prepared their excuses by preparing decorations. Oh, but miss, we're still being good Christians. See, gold is for royalty, and Jesus is like the King of Kings, right? And the green stuff is like resurrection and new life, because plants, they grow, yeah? And the red is because he died for our sins and stuff. Yeah, go ahead and log off for me. Certain symbols from that period, like the colours of Christmas, stars, and angels, managed to persist through the generations. But so did the concept of Christmas being a time that should be respectfully and moderately observed rather than spent goofing off with your friends. Oh, it's nearly midnight. We'd better start to wrap this up. So how does all of this tie into a bunch of creatures wanting to eat some kids on Christmas? Well, Santa's whole thing is centered around giving kids either toys or coal depending on whether they were naughty or nice during the year. And for the most part, the creature ensemble all operate similarly. Yes, some of them like to rip off limbs and fill up the holes with straw, but it's not like they're completely unreasonable. Each of their stories actually explains that they only do those things if a child fails to do something specific, like helping to clean the house, the street, or feeding those who are hungry. This cast of quirky characters started taking shape around the 15th century, but we know that the tradition of treating the festive season as a reminder to do good deeds for others was first popularized by St. Nick's actions back in the 4th century, which he chose to do as a reflection of his faith in the very first person to be associated with the Christmas season, Jesus. And if you notice, the teachings of Jesus largely focused on doing good deeds for those around you, as well as the concept of not living a naughty life. And that right there is the smoking gun. Not to mention, it's stated that some of the Christmas creatures will decide to hold off on eating a kid in favor of dragging them to hell instead. So yeah, maybe the allegory for sin wasn't actually as subtle as I thought it was. But that leads us back to the present day. Even though this is an incomplete history of Christmas, there are still a few more amusing tidbits that I really wanted to share. But it's so close to midnight that we'll have to race through them really quickly. In Old English, the period of January and December was referred to as Yule, which eventually became synonymous with Christmas. Similarly, the word Noel actually comes from the Latin word for birthday. The exact date of the birth of Jesus is unknown, but December 25th was chosen because it was the date of the Roman winter solstice. People kiss underneath mistletoe because it was historically used in fertility rituals. Christmas is occasionally written as Xmas because the Greek word for Christ starts with an X. Each year, NORAD tracks and supports Santa, protecting him from anyone who doesn't believe in Christmas. All because a 1955 Sears campaign accidentally printed the number for Colonel Harry Shoup, in place of a number that was supposed to be for children to call Santa Claus. The government department then continued the joke through the Christmas season by using a picture of Santa to represent the unidentified objects that they were tracking, which inspired Shoup to publicize the department as being a direct supporter of Santa Claus during the Christmas season. Nobody really knows why candy canes or gingerbread are associated with Christmas. But it's theorized that candy canes were given to kids in order to keep them quiet during Christmas church services, and gingerbread houses were just something that a family could do together while rugged up inside during the winter. Oh, gotta hurry up. There's a Russian Santa called Ded Moroz who delivers gifts with his granddaughter Snegorochka. But nobody really cared about them until the 1990s when Vladimir Putin noticed that Santa was becoming popular. So he dug up Ded Moroz and pushed for him to become a prominent figure again to stop Santa from influencing Russian traditions. Evergreen trees are used as Christmas trees because they don't lose their leaves during the winter, which is also why they're called evergreen. And lastly, Santa lives in the North Pole because it's somewhere out of reach of children. Whew, we made it through in time. Going through history can be tricky because there are so many gaps that we have to fill, and even the things that we have extensively archived can be biased depending on who wrote them. But there are very few things in this world that can be so universally appreciated as Christmas. And regardless of what you believe, I think it's a wonderful thing that so many people have decided that at the very least, this should be a time to celebrate the joy of being able to share another meal with the people we hold dear to us. I think I heard something outside. Even if it turns out to be one of the creatures, I've been a good boy this year, so I know I'm not in any danger.
Fear not, our